And I think part of it too is knowing what you want your end result to be or do, right? Because if you just wanted your end result to be a very, mood vibe based piece of art or story, that's very different than if you wanted something that's like, crisp and clear and is a very defined piece of art. That's how you approach that's going to be very, very different. And that's actually what's been really interesting is just seeing the same story with kind of two different styles. Um, and both of them worked. Like honestly, like where we got to last week, I thought that looked amazing. Like I'm like, this is really cool. And it inspired the whole story. And now seeing how the story now in turn is kind of helping to shape the more refined piece of art is it's a neat process to watch it happen.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and like I guess last week. So one thing I want to add to what we're doing here, sometimes you get, and this happens to me. So this isn't like exclusive to people that are just starting out. You get stuck or you lack inspiration. Doing something what I did last time, which is you start with like just a bunch of blotches essentially. I started with black, and you could always just take white ink and just put in a bunch of blotches of white, or vice versa. You can just take like a brush, pen and ink, or like a brush and ink, and just blotch it and see if you can see shapes and things from it, not having any idea of where you're going to go with it. And
Hmm.
then when you start to see something, you then use that as a reference to go and create like a character or a composition from it. It's a form of doodling. And so, having, and then on your part, you were coming up with story and
Hmm.
going, well, we can try this. And what do you think of that? And I'm like, oh, well, what if we try this? Oh yeah, we can try it. So then
Yeah.
that was a form of story doodling.
Yep.
And then you're at the end of the our show, you were like, okay, you go and think about the story writing part of it. I'm going to think about like what I would want to do
Yeah.
with this composition in our next episode, and come back, reconvene, and have a bit more of a game plan. And because we have this game plan now, it's a little bit more of a strategic uh,
Yes.
illustration and story, right? And so that came from like kind of going hypothetically being like, I have no idea what I want to do. I have no idea what direction I want to go, and being okay with that and just letting it go where it wants to go.
And that is like such an important creative exercise to try because I feel like so often we really do feel like we have to have all the answers before we start. Or there's no point in starting if you don't know exactly where you're going or what this is going to be. So, kind of forcing yourself to be like, here's a page. What do we do with it? And letting it build itself, letting it come to life through ideas and doodles and just random is really, really good for your creative ability to just kind of let yourself flow like that. And it's also really satisfying to see it go somewhere. Like it's great to start, but it's also nice to be like, wow, we circled around a whole bunch of things and we actually landed somewhere neat. Like that in and of itself is a really, really fun thing to do.
Yeah, and one key part of that if you're doing this solo, and it may be more difficult, is to come have it like a story coming along with it.
Mhm.
Having somebody like to bounce an idea off of as you're drawing, it creates a whole different level, because then that inspires you as you're drawing and gives you ideas you can go into a certain direction. And so I do find that having somebody or a team
Mhm.
to, even if you get together at like a coffee shop or a comic shop and you're all doodling, or some of you are writing, some are whatever it is, and you just kind of riff off of an idea and let everybody kind of go the direction they want to go in with it. But that is a great way for you to brainstorm, right? Especially if you don't know where to start.
I totally agree. I always find that if you have, another person or a team or a group that you trust and that everybody has a similar goal of like, let's see what we can come up with, you get better stuff for it, right? Because you don't get stuck in your own head or in your, well, I'm not sure what this is supposed to be now. And now I immediately have to turn it into something because there's other people there being like, oh, are you creating this? Or what about if it was that? And it expands you and it stops you from kind of putting yourself too quickly into a box. Eventually, we all have
Mhm.
to get there in order for it to be a story, but sometimes we close that box too quickly and you end up not sort of exploring all these different things to really get to the best idea because you're like, oh, no, I'm looking at that. That was a duck. Okay, done. As opposed to it could have been so many more things. But it's a
Mhm.
process and it's something that if you have that group of people or a partner, it is really fun to just sort of be like, let's just have a creative session and see what we do.
Yeah, that's right. It prevents you from only thinking like this big.
Yeah,
You can
because
actually
everyone's
start to like
world perspective is so different, right? So I'm looking at it
Mhm.
from something I'm thinking, and you're looking, with your eyes that see something completely different. And then when I tell you something, it might change it, and then vice versa. Then I see something new, and suddenly this idea is kind of snowballing, and we're rolling with it, and it's becoming something. Because if you only have your, singular perspective on the world, it can be really tough to possibly think of anything that is outside of what you already in your brain kind of planned it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, you're having somebody that has a whole different set of experiences through
Mhm.
life and skill coming at it with you and introducing, like whatever, maybe they just read a book or they just saw a show and it
Yeah.
reminds them of something, and then they throw it at you and you're like, "Oh, I've never even heard of this before." Yeah, like I can, work with this, right?
Yeah,
And then you create something that you wouldn't have been able to create on your own.
exactly. And the fun thing with creativity is when you first start, you might feel like it's a bit of a, slow go. But once it starts to move, you'd be amazed with then once an idea comes out, it spawns another idea and another idea and another idea. And suddenly, once you get those creative juices flowing, it is true, right? Like you really can start to just get yourself somewhere that you would never have gotten before, but it's like working out. You gotta warm up, right? You gotta get started. You can't assume that you're just gonna sit down and, like, be creative, and it's just gonna instantly work like that. Because no matter how long you've been doing it, it's not always easy to just turn that tap on.
Getting back to what I'm working on here,
Mhm.
I'm trying to I'm now working on a little bit more of the details, but more in regards to the movement of the structures, right? So you can see I'm laying in like where the windows are going to potentially be, or the on the top here the tiles of the roof, or the bricks right here, with the on the characters. I'm starting to think about how is the clothing flowing on them? Like how is it where they're creating an angle? Like what is this fabric doing? What kind of fabric is it? Right? Is it obviously we're dealing with probably more like burlap type fabric than let's say something could be some leather as well, right?
Mhm.
Versus like cotton or polyester, right? So how is it going to lay it on them and fold and where things are angular, right?
Mhm.
So these are all the things I'm thinking about. I'm still not putting in definitive detail. I'm just giving an idea of like the structure still, right? I'm thinking about the tile on the ground here and what kind of tile is there going to be some grout in between it, right? Just fleshing out this world a little bit more so that you're getting a really good you're basically creating an environment that is going to be fairly realistic or lived in, so that by the time you actually start getting to some more finished lines, you're going to uh, have answered all of the questions you may have had in regards to what is this material, where's the light coming from, um, like how are the angles, like the composition, does it actually work really well? Is there things I can,
Mhm.
you really want to lay out a lot of this kind of figure out a lot of this problem solving in the early stages before you get to a more finished drawing. And because you're doing that, you're taking more time at this stage. And you can obviously you can erase. You're not so concerned with it's not so delicate.
Mhm.
If you make a mistake, you don't have to worry about like, oh no, this is a line I really liked. Why is that line not working? Right. Right now I'm not thinking about that. I'm not worried about that. I'm just trying to figure out like where the seams of the boots are and where what is he leaning against here? Is it like some kind of a stone that he's leaning on, or is it like um maybe it's more brick? Like what is it? Like
Mhm.
what's this world where and yeah, as I said, I'm thinking, okay, where's the light coming from here? And what does that light look like if it's like all pebbly here? So maybe, you're gonna have a little bit of an uneven light coming through here because it's a bit pebbly. And then on this side, it's all gonna be dark, and those X's like represent like where shadow is gonna be, right? So these are just all things that I think about as I'm working so that I'm trying to systematically problem solve, get rid of like any of the um, issues that may come up later. And it's really at the end of the day, this is trial and error. It's looking at things in life using references, looking at like a reference for something and going, oh, this is the way that, if this is all like stonework or woodwork, old woodwork, it's going to create like, because they didn't clean it back then. It's all kind of like, looks like there's a lot of soot on it. So
Mhm.
soot, SOOT, right? So therefore, you're getting some really interesting textures from the light, and then what the materials were that they were actually wearing. What are there buckles and things that we don't actually have on our clothing anymore because of we have zippers, right? That kind of stuff.
Absolutely, and all those little details are what make it that really interesting piece that you just wanna keep looking at and sort of bringing it all in. Personally, my absolute favorite thing about this whole composition is the pose of Ollie holding that clock and that exhaust like, how you got that so perfectly, like, that to me tells a story. Like, just if there was nothing else, just him standing there slumped over, leaning, holding this heavy clock, like that that really tells us everything that then motivates everything that happens afterwards, right? Because without that moment, the rest of it wouldn't be as plausible, right? He would be like, "No, no, no. We're almost there. We're gonna keep going. It's fine. I got this." But you can see in this that he's like, he's done. He's ready for any excuse to put this thing down. And I just love that that 1 second, that one bit of this frame just tells so much because of how you angled him and how you set him up.
And those things aren't necessarily going to come to you right away.
Mhm.
And that was one of those things that I was like, really, when I was debating whether we were going to do this again or not, that was the one thing I was like, if I can't figure that out, it's going to really be frustrating for me. And I'm just going to keep on, like reworking and working it, reworking it. And I wouldn't have gone as far as I think I've gone so far.
Mhm.
So I had to think about it and go, do I want to, um, go into this if I don't know exactly what I want this to look like? Um, or do I want to think about it just a little bit more and then uh, if I can figure out what it's going to look like, then make that decision. Go, yes, let's work on it because I think I've figured it out. I had glimpses in my head. I had an idea
Yeah.
that I wanted the composition to have some really so I'm gonna show this in a different color so you can see like what I was thinking. So I wanted to have like movement in this direction,
Mhm.
and then I wanted to have movement in this direction. And so I had to kind of figure out what it looked like so that there was, different because before they were overlapping too much.
Mhm.
And because they were overlapping too much, it didn't create enough of a dynamic composition. And then one of the I hadn't thought quite about the direction, but then you have the clock going in another direction. So if you look at it, it's kind of like this, this, and this, all kind of creating interesting
Mhm.
diagonals, right? Um, so that those are things to think about, and then there that's a arguably speaking, that could be a, like you would have to have a bit of experience to figure those things out, but you can also look at like well-known compositions from, uh, let's say, like illustrators from the NC Wyeth era, right, where they were doing the children's books,
Mhm.
like, they were doing, Treasure Island and stuff, and they had some great compositions in there. You can study those and then figure out, like, how you can break down the shapes and try to replicate something similar, right?
And composition is one of those things that really does make or break it in so many ways, because, yeah, you have the 2 characters there and, they exist in the space, and it's a beautiful background and all this stuff, but the amount of storytelling that just comes from the way that their bodies are positioned and where the clock is in the frame and the way that they look like there's motion, it really does add so much to it, and, like, the different energies between the 2 of them, right? Where, like, Bram with the light has this almost like, "Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's do this," and we're always like, "Just leave me here, like, I'm done," and that tells a story at a single glance, and that's such a neat thing to have.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Like, I'm trying to, um, take those ideas, and how many times can I, like, reinforce them? So
Mhm.
now I've actually, broken the, banister. That's what the word I wanted to come, like the banister
Mhm.
that was here, and you
Yep.
can see now it's kind of like it broke off a bit. Hopefully, as I'm working this composition, I can figure out how to make it work so that it feels like it's moving, and right,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. But and then reflected in his face a little bit more, going, "Ooh, that was close. I didn't want, to fall over there, right?"
Well, and
Um,
also, like, to that point as well, they're supposed to be sneaky, and that probably made a loud crash. So that instantly already creates another level of, like, "Let's just get rid of this thing." 'Cause now we're
mhm,
we're running into stuff, our light's coming out, I'm exhausted, we broke the banister, like, it's just adding, again, all these different points that make it more believable when they just decide, "Forget it, we're just gonna dump it here," because all these things are happening that are making it so much more urgent to just finish this job and get out of here.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, whatever if you know what your story is, and then from there you use every tool in your tool belt to figure out, how can I, like, add to the story using different elements while it's still, everything kind of still works together. That's
Mhm,
not easy to do, right? So the first thing I did was I started with the very basics, the very the elements that I needed to have, which were the 2 characters, um, one of them wanting to go on, the other one having a difficult time of it. And then from there, I'm trying to go, okay, how can I make it so that am just adding to the composition, not detracting from it, right? And
mhm.
so some of it's a little bit of trial and error. Some of it is, um, I can kind of visualize what it'll look like beforehand because I've done something similar before, right? So I know it'll work pretty well. And then you just, because you're not concerned with, perfection at this point, you can, right now I'm going, okay, I want to move his arm in a little bit more, change it a little bit so that, um, it moves a bit away from the, banister that I do like, but I actually want to use that. I like that part. Beautiful thing about working digitally is you can keep certain elements that you like. I would argue, if you were, um, doing this traditionally, and there's certain parts of it that you're like, "I don't wanna get rid of it." You can, like, either, like, if you're erasing parts of it, you can always try to, like, trace the parts you do like, and then tape it on top of your pencil composition, right? Because if you are going to work, let's say, you could always use a new piece of paper and just all of the kind of like Frankenstein monster type of elements that
Mhm.
you've put together on this one penciled page you have taped together. Then you put a light box under on. You put that tracing or the Frankenstein paper, and then you put the ink, like Bristol board or something on
Mhm.
top of it. And so that way, there are ways for you to keep things that you like while getting rid of things that you don't, right? So there's workarounds. You just have to kind of be creative with it.
It is amazing though how much digital has changed so many things in that respect, right? Things that had workarounds and were doable become infinitely easier if digital is something that you're comfortable working in. And obviously not everybody is for good reason, right? Everybody's got their own style. But it really does solve a lot of those kinds of problems, just making them lesser problems, right? They're always solvable, but with digital it's a little bit faster.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it does. There's the opposite of that, which is digital because you have so many. You can constantly undo. You can nitpick something so much that you actually don't get it done.
Yeah.
Whereas when it comes to something traditionally, you just have to go. Well, you got to live with it. It's
That's gonna work.
you know.
Yeah. No, it is true. There is that, with too much control, too much choice, too much ability to change it infinitely, it's hard to say, "I'm done, this is good, moving on," because it could always be a little bit better, right? And that can get you into a dangerous loop.
I'm kind of uh, making it like insinuating that that's what's going to be here, but I'm not actually drawing them in,
Right.
right? For the little granular part of like underneath part of whatever this stone structure is, right?
Well, and I think that that's also really smart too, because like by putting certain things as placeholders, you're putting your thought out now so you can remove it from your brain and work on something else without being like, I can't forget to do this thing, even though I'm not quite ready to do it yet. By doing that, you're like, okay, perfect. I've thought about this. I can move on and I can come back to it. So it also frees up some of that, that mental energy to work on the next thing without worrying about the last thing.
Yeah, exactly. Um, So I think the I'm going to say pretty shortly we're going to wrap things up, just because I'm at a point where I'm getting pretty close to if I were to start to think about like, okay, I'm going to maybe do a much more refined version of this,
Mhm.
and that's just going to take a while. So the question will be, do I do this? Do I keep on working on this?
If you've got thoughts or feelings or ideas about any of this, leave a comment, send us a DM. Make sure you're subscribed so that you are kind of seeing where this goes and where everything else goes. Thank you.